Welcome to Relationship Renegades on Fun for Life Radio. I'm one of your hosts, Rachele Brooks Smith.
And I'm Emilio Palafox.
And today we have a super special guest with us today. Babe, tell him all about it.
Yes, thank you guys for joining us and playing full out as usual. Today we have Wade Lightheart. He is the president of BioOptimizers, a 3-time Canadian natural bodybuilding champion. He is also one of the world's premier authorities on natural nutrition and training methods. Having majored in sports science at the University of New Brunswick, he has authored numerous books on health, nutrition, and exercise, which have sold in over 80 countries. Wade is sought after by athletes and high-performance-oriented individuals worldwide for his advice on how to optimize their health and fitness levels. Also, he is a neighbor of us, tuning in here from Venice, California. We are in Santa Monica, and it's just been a pleasure to get to know you a little bit over the year, Wade. And just thank you so much for being here on Relationship Renegades. Welcome to the show, my man.
Yeah, great to be here. Anything that's involved in relationships and renegades, how could you not want to be there?
Yeah, man. Yeah. And for those listening, a lot of people,
Congratulations, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, fiance right here. Gonna get married soon. Yeah. And so, for those listening, it's not just about, as you guys know, the relationship like me and Rachel, but really the relationship to ourselves, others, the world around us, and to God's source, universe, whatever you want to call it, the higher source, life source. But today, it's a very special one because it's also the relationship to food and our environment. And so I'm very happy to have the president of BioOptimizers, one that really stands out from the crowd in terms, and we'll be talking about that. But one of the things that I guess I just want to start off by saying, Wade, is when I started trying your products, I love that you guys aren't just a supplement company. You guys do your best to really provide cutting edge on health and fitness. And you want to be able to really take people from, sickness to really performing well, feeling well, living a full life and having, optimization, obviously. So one, thank you for that. Thank you for not, how can I put it? I think there's a lot of companies out there, especially in the biohacking circles that we run into, where after a while, I don't want to say settle, but then they look at margin. They want to make sure they get it, make more money cheap. But that you guys had a mission to always have the best, and that you guys wouldn't do this if it wasn't the best. So I appreciate your work and mission in that. It really means a lot, especially when food and supplements have changed from the way that it used to be to what it is now. And I think, we're this podcast and this radio show, it's not the biohacking circles that we run into, right? So this is the masses tuning in. They may not know, what things were like World War II going forward and where we're at now. So I think, let's maybe start there and shed some light to the masses as how was it, how was the bacteria and enzymes and food and all that stuff back then, and kind of maybe fast forward us to where we are now and why we need certain things like this.
Sure. Thanks for the intro. I think for your listeners, because they're relationship oriented, I think we are living in an unprecedented time due to the unintended consequences of technological innovation. And what I mean by that is, for the 10,000 or generations before us, we lived in a very clear symbiotic relationship as a community, in a small community where you're forced to interact with people with differences and capabilities and stuff like that. And you saw the differences as advantages, not necessarily ways to move away from, because that person, you needed the blacksmith, you needed the craftsman, you needed the person who knew the most about gardening. And so the quality of that community and the survival of that community was intimately connected to the relationships that you had in that immediate 150 person group. That also was your relationship with the land and the relationship with the animals that you consumed or used to perform work. And so for literally the entire history of humanity till recently, we've been clear about the importance and value and exchange of relationship. Now, to lead into your question, at World War II, everything changed. In World War II, we entered into the ushering in of the nuclear age and then the rapid technological innovation. So we dropped in nuclear bomb on Japan, ended the war. And after the war, the United States became the de facto world dominant culture. So we had 200 years of British dominance. Was the pound silver was the currency. Information came out, communications, technology, television, radio, shipping increased because now the war exposed all these other cultures, and people wanted sushi from Japan, and people wanted pasta from Italy, and they wanted coffee from South America, and cigarettes from America, and like all these sort of things started to happen, and people started to exchange on an international. So the world shrunk dramatically. It expanded on one level, travel, and you could go to other countries relatively easily before. So you had this massive expansion of possibilities. You had people moving out of small communities into industrialized areas. And then we started to moving into specialized fields and manufacturing components. So we went from, at the turn of the century, 95% of people living on a farm or connecting with their food and how it was grown or the animals that they were eating or that sort of stuff, to living today less than 1%, just in 3 generations.
So crazy.
So crazy.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, what also happened, there was an explosion in the population thanks to new medical interventions like antibiotics and stuff. People just died of infections that saved millions of people, but there was also consequences to that were unintended. The interconnection meant that you lived in an apartment building now and you knew your friends back home, but you didn't know your neighbor down the hall. Right?
Yeah.
So that started to change. But with this population explosion and the people moving away from farms into the city, the governments of the world recognizes we're going to have a food crisis. And so what they started to regulate and mandate is monoculture farming and creating food boards where, we had to have this much wheat and this much soy and this much corn and this much, all these kind of staples. And so we went from crop rotation, which we normally experienced, and where you would change the different crops because each crop has a different mineral requirement and would leave some and have benefits. And then you would have 1 year where you would grow hemp and then plow that back into the soil to reconstitute the soil. And then you'd have 1 year where you would let it go, where the microbes would be able to work on those materials and make the ground rich in vital, which would supply the vitamins, the minerals, the nutrients, the phytonutrients, and also the plants. So the plants would be healthy and strong. Well, that had disastrous consequences. They still couldn't make the yield mark. So they used chemistry, which had just solved all these problems. And we were going to throw nitrogen from the leftover bombs of World War II, because now we've got nuclear bombs. So all these nitrogen bombs aren't worth anything. But we can take that nitrogen and we can put it on the soil and we can make crops grow faster. Well, the challenge with that, it gave up essential protein content of the plants. That caused our protein to be converted to enzymes to meet the metabolic needs of the plant in order to grow on a mineral deficient soil, because we're just running the same crops over and over and over with no break. The plants got weaker. Then we had blight, then we had infections, then we lose crops to pesticides. So we went back to the chemist. Let's add herbicides, let's test pesticides, right? And all these chemical agents which disrupt the natural enzymatic component. Enzymes are your metabolic bank account. They are the ability for you to do work, whether that's having a conversation, whether it's thinking, whether it's blinking, whether it's going to the bathroom. All of that is related to metabolic processes, and your enzymatic bank account is the determinant of how many of those checks that you can write on a given day.
I love that.
Every species on the planet eats its food in a raw, uncooked state. And when you cook food, you destroy the enzymes. When you process food, you pasteurize it, you destroy the enzymes. You also destroy the essential microbes. So if I eat a carrot out of my mom's garden, right, I get the bacteria that goes with the carrot with the enzymes, and I get that. When I get a carrot from Erewhon down the street, I don't necessarily get that. That's all been washed, cleaned, pharmaceuticals pasteurized, maybe sprayed on the. So, even though I'm spending a really quality product or a lot of money to get that product, I'm not getting that natural relationship of everything else that was associated with. Plus, I may be getting these assortment of chemicals. And so now, today in the United States, just 3 generations later, 12% of the emergency hospital visits right now are related to gastrointestinal issues. We have 100 million people in this country that experience digestive distress any given day. Okay. We have 25% of those are on permanent prescription medications.
Yeah.
And the number keeps going up. We have a massive rise in obesity. This affects self-worth, self-value. We have an increase in genetic-based diseases. We have a significant downtrend in fertility rates, testosterone levels, which are involved in a very aspect of intimacy, and then we have hyperestrogen levels, which are causing weight gain, and then neurochemical imbalances because we're not able to convert the proteins we're eating into the neurochemical hormones that make us feel good about ourselves, good about others, easy to relate, easy to connect, and have all those happy connective hormones, which we normally feel. Yeah. But on top of that, we lock each other up into rooms and we have video interaction.
I know.
We don't have the tactile taste, scent, physical hug, all those things which have bonded the biochemical reactivity of the human organism. And so the complications, especially since COVID, have grown exponentially. And we see this with an increase in mental health issue, increase in suicides, increase in family domestic violence. Yeah. We have an increase in alcoholism. We have shortages on antidepressant medications. We have massive financial programs that are going on. So the mitigations that we've implemented to deal with the virus have been counter to natural human relationships. And as renegade relationship people, we need to be able to take back control of both our inner terrain so that when we are in relationship, we have access to the range of human capacities that allow a healthy relationship to flourish.
So much to unpack there. Thank you so much for sharing all that, because I think it makes it really, anybody listening, if you didn't just go like, whoa, the kind of world we're living in and why. And I've heard you say something that was so profound about a peach in previous interviews. Can you talk about that? Like, what's the difference of, like, if I lived in 1955 and I ate a peach compared to if I ate a peach now? What was the difference?
You need over 50 today to get the same nutrient quality. The other side of it is who knows what a range of chemicals that you're going to get on top of that peach today, which are going to cause a host of cascade of issues as well. So not even just from the nutrient quality, there's this other exponential load that happens on the system, and that impacts our liver function. And when you impact liver function, you affect neurochemical production, and you affect your ability to be present with people.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up with a pretty terrible gut health issue that ruined my mental health, my emotional health. And I was then put on, medication for ADHD and, and then all these different things, and my relationship suffered. And obviously that's why I'm so passionate about helping rewire our programming, not thinking that, if you're feeling depressed or lazy or anxious, to first check in with your gut health and your food and, what you're talking about, your enzymes. If someone's listening right now and they're like, okay, whoa, this is so new to me. Like, where do I even start? If my food isn't good, if I can't even if I'm paying a high quality price, for this food, even at Erewhon or Whole Foods, and it's still not there, like, what can I do to kind of change my relationship or upgrade my relationship so that I know that the food that I'm eating is actually helping my body rather than harming my body?
Well, see, there's a fundamental assumption that all nutritionists make, and this is my pet peeve with all the dietary philosophies and things that are out that create so much conflict for individuals and why they struggle. And that is the assumption that everything I put in my mouth is converted into either energy units or building blocks. And that, I would say, assumption is deadly. So there is a 5-stage process. I've boiled it down to 5. I mean, you could break it down into a million different biochemical There's 5 main components that happen for you in order to convert your food into energy units or building blocks. And the first is the taste, touch, smell of your food, right? And the sensory experience, which restaurants and places will accentuate and stuff like that. That starts to prepare your body to have its digest time. And so, for example, if I say sauerkraut and pickles, a lot of people start to salivate a little bit or something like that. That's like a Pavlovian response to say, oh, food is coming, or you smell your favorite bread coming, or you smell your favorite meal cooking or whatever. You're like, oh man, you're just like, can't wait to have this. Then as you masticate your food, it's a fancy name for chewing, the food goes down the esophagus into the upper cardiac portion of the stomach. And during the first 30 to 60 minutes, this is where the enzymes that are supposed to be present in the food are going to start breaking down the first stages of digestion. Well, most of the food has been cooked, so you don't have that. Second thing that happens, so now your body's going to have to manufacture enzymes on the backside, which are going to have a metabolic cost. And I'll get to that in a minute. After 30 to 60 minutes, you have what's called hydrochloric acid comes in. Hydrochloric acid does two main purposes. Number one, its most important function is that it disinfects from bacteria, viruses, pathogens, you name it, whatever it happens to be, that could disrupt your health. It'll kill it. Now, the other feature that it does is it changes the pH that will cause some enzymes to be activated and some to be deactivated. Now, most people by the time they're 35 don't produce enough hydrochloric acid in our world today. So now you are opening yourself up to microbial infection from foreign bacteria, foreign viruses, parasites, you name it.
And you said after 35 years.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
And sometimes now with kids, we have that issue. If you got acid reflux, heartburn, and things like that, it's not too much acid generally. It's insufficient amounts of acid. And so the medical intervention that they use is to give you acid reflux to treat the symptom. But what's happening is your food is actually fermenting in your stomach, not properly in your intestinal tract. And then it's causing this belch up that's causing the burning sensation. So after the digestion goes in that stage, it travels out of the intestinal tract. Your body adds these fancy name for minerals called bicarbonate buffers, which are alkaline minerals that buffer the high acid of that pH, which kills off the bacteria. And then it goes into the intestinal tract. Now, in your intestinal tract is hundreds and hundreds of strains of bacteria, and your culture, your genetics, your dietary practices, your state of stress and well-being are going to determine the entire culture, which is referred to as the microbiome. So I always say there's 10% good, 10% bad, and 80% opportunists. So all of those lifestyle factors are going to determine which ones start to grow and expand and which ones start to diminish and go dormant. And they live in a little fine layer called the mucosa layer, your intestinal lining. And they can go semi-dormant if there's no food, and if there's the right food for them, they'll go. Now, what's interesting when you talk about relationships is these bacteria, which when I took grade 3 class, it was like bacteria was something that was bad and you had to kill it, all things, and you had to, that was the concept. But we actually live in a symbiotic relationship with these bacteria cultures because they are involved in the essential manufacturing and conversion of our food into the building blocks and into the energy units. And if we don't have key elements of these bacteria, oftentimes we can't make the neurochemicals that make our brains run. So we go, I don't know why I feel so stressed. I don't know why I get depressed. I don't know why I don't feel anything in my heart.
Yeah.
Well, oftentimes it's actually traced that you don't have enough of the good guys that are manufacturing these key neurotransmitters, because most of your neurotransmitters are actually made in your gut, and that's why we have gut feelings. So there is a second brain in our gut, and we can feel it. You know that feeling you go, oh, that doesn't feel then there's like, oh, that feels really good. There's actually now scientific evidence proving that those are relative to the chemicals that these bacteria release relative to external and internal stimulus, which is when you start to realize, you wonder, well, who's running the machine? Are we running the bacteria? Are they running us? This is a symbiotic relationship. Now, most of us have been exposed to a lot of antibiotics and these herbicides and pesticides and fungicides, which are killing off these essential things. Then we're eating processed foods, which feed bad guys, and that's starving out the good guys. And all of a sudden, I don't know why I feel anxious. I don't know why I feel stressed. I don't know why I have ADD. I can't focus anymore. Well, that's because you're not able to manufacture those chemicals. And then the final stage is all that with your peristaltic contraction will go to elimination. And anytime that you have undigested food in your intestinal tract, particularly proteins and rancid fats cause the most problems. then what happens is bad guys will start to eat. And not only will you not produce the things that make you feel good, they will start to produce chemicals that'll make you feel bad. They will also trigger sugar cravings. They will also trigger food cravings. So when you wake up at, it's 11:30 at night, and you're like, I want the ice cream. Why is that? Fighting yourself to not to go down to the 7-Eleven to say, like, I'm going to go down and go to, I got to do it. And then, you wake up in the morning and you feel all bloated and tired and your eyes are crusty. You're like, oh, why'd I do that?
Because your gut bacteria.
I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about, Wade. No, just kidding.
Yeah. And then you go out with your girlfriend on Friday night, right? And you say, you know what? Let's have a bottle of wine. We're going to have the dessert, right?
Yeah.
And then the next day you feel worse. And then suddenly, a day later you get in a fight or you feel upset and you're like, well, why is that? And he doesn't care about me, or she doesn't care about me, or I don't care. Or there's these disassociations that we attribute to just social cues, which often have a base in biochemistry. And I can't tell you how many people have corrected relationships in their life with their family, with their work, because now they have better resources biochemically to support the work that they do emotionally, psychologically, communication-wise, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing all this, Wade. And if you guys are just tuning in, you're listening to Relationship Renegades on Fun for Life Radio, where we're talking with the president of BioOptimizers, Wade Lightheart. And what I really love this for those tuning in is that not only are we talking about the relationship to ourselves, our environment, and our food, but it's really about if we don't feel well, we're not going to be showing up well in our relationships. And so we're really enjoying this conversation with Wade here. And I think, you'd mentioned earlier about just in addition to like COVID going on, there's so many other things going on that are being disrupted with domestic violence going up and mental health issues and all these things. And I love that you talked about, the gut feelings and that, it does start with the gut. An interesting thought that I had a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, when we talk about our relationship to the world around us and the bacteria around us, one, when we talk about COVID, right, I think a lot, everyone's cleaning their hands and constantly spraying everything and eliminating all these things that we have, like you said, a symbiotic relationship with, that we need these things to thrive. Can you talk a little bit more about that, especially in the world we're living in? It's like, there's something to like, okay, be careful, but, let's strengthen the immune system and let's focus on that. But maybe diving a little bit deeper about like, hey, we do need these bugs. Like, let's stop killing everything off that we do have a symbiotic relationship with.
I cannot comprehend the amount of low resolution ideas that are being propagated by our governments and by people who should know better, and the fact that they are discounting people in the natural health community because there is a financial benefit for people to be on vaccines. There is a financial benefit for certain corporations to continue with lockdowns. There's a financial benefit to large multinational corporations who provide the tools that support this program. And we are seeing the greatest movement away from normal human relationships ever in the history of the planet. This is crushing families, communities, and people. Yes, there is a virus. Yes, there is a risk, and people need to mitigate that. But the reality is, traditionally, when we did restrictions due to, infection rates and stuff, you quarantine the sick, not the healthy. So we've inverted that process. And the problem is, when we don't interact with other people, children and humans and adults and stuff, what happens is we actually weaken our immune system response. We do need to exchange these bacteria. We do need, and there's some evidence, even the processes of kissing and oral sex, these type of things are actual biological sexual determinations to see if those people are compatible. And there's research demonstrating that women will be attracted to men who are biologically and genetically compatible with their DNA by pheromonic cues created by these bacteria cultures, right?
Yeah.
We don't know why it is. And think about it.
Yep.
You get a certain smell and a scent with your partner, and some people that you would interact with, you really reject it from. Well, there is a genetic and biological component to it. But from an immune system function, when you are continually bathing your hands in this sea of chemicals, you are disrupting the natural biological defense mechanisms of our body and weakening the immune system overall, as opposed to enhancing it. And so the model that we advocate in the health world is we want to bolster the millions and millions of years of evolutionary biology. I am suspect of aggressive technological innovation that takes away from our traditional processes from a bacteria culture standpoint in this microbiome, which is essential. If we didn't have these good guys with us, we would be dead. Yeah. So what are the consequences of what's happening? And we're seeing the devastation. It's quite obvious. And you know what? The real freight on this whole thing hasn't yet hit. We're under these kind of illusions where we're just, making it rain with money and to people and serving people who are the most impacted in a very poor way. But the consequences of this moving forward will probably extend into the decades.
Yeah.
So if someone's listening right now and they're like, okay, so, you talk about like the good guys and the bad guys when it comes to bacteria, and understanding that like, hey, I'm a human, but I'm made up of more bacteria than anything else.
Yes.
And how to have a more symbiotic, healthy relationship with all that is me, meaning understanding my bacteria and how it operates and how to feed the good guys and kill off the bad guys. What can people do? Obviously, you created some incredible products that are really helping people with that, but it's so confusing for people. They're like, oh, should I take a prebiotic or a probiotic, and which one? And how do I know? Because there's billions of strains out there. And can you speak to that of like, what can people start with?
Great question. And it's very, very complicated because we live in a world of what I call Me Too marketing. And that is, you see a little bit of research, something comes out and supports it. Everybody jumps on the bandwagon. People who are looking into, as you illustrated earlier, profit margins that are running, they're going to take advantage and pump out the latest product with all sorts of chemicals. So let me talk about how do you select the right probiotic for your body. First and foremost, turn to the back of the label. If it has things like magnesium stearate and polymorpho whateverness that you can't pronounce, don't take it. Okay. The second thing is because you don't want those binders like magnesium oxide and these sort of things, which are essential. I prefer, for the most part, when you're using probiotics, to do the freeze dried. And the reason why is when you're dealing with ones that require temperature, a variance of 1 degree causes a massive expansion of bacteria inside the body, or diminishing. And what happens, they'll eat the prebiotic food, and then what you're taking is actually a dead food, because it's very hard to regulate the temperature perfectly through the manufacturing process and the stabilization, and then shipping from the warehouse into the thing, and it could be in the back. There's so many variants inside of that process that the likelihood that you're going to get a solid product is very, very low.
So you're talking about things that are refrigerated, like if you go to the store and there's so many different prebiotics and probiotics that are in the cold section, you'd rather have people take things that...
Yep. And not because that's not necessarily a good product when it came out of the gate, when it manufactured. It's just, if you understand the logistics of where that comes from to getting into the store, goes to the warehouse and the distributor thing, and there's a time delay, and then it could be sitting on the back of the building at Whole Foods in the sunshine on a hot day, and that 1-2 degrees will cause a doubling, 1 degree will cause a doubling of the activity, which means that they're going to consume more of the prebiotics. The prebiotics, all a prebiotic is the food that keeps that bacteria alive. And so typically how humans have evolved and developed is that they develop bacteria that grows, that helps them digest the cultural diets that they found themselves into. So today we expose ourselves to a lot of foods. We expose ourselves to a lot of out of seasons food. Then we also have compromisation or enzymatic and bacteria levels. So why there's some people will do better on a keto diet versus some people will do better on a vegetarian diet is often due to the bacteria cultures present in their intestinal tract. Now you can switch it, but generally there's predispositions. And then there's also complications that come from exposure to various chemicals that make it almost impossible for people to recover. So they're better off on a typical diet. Usually once you master your microbiome, you get to expand choices. Like I'm pretty confident I can do really well on virtually any diet I would choose. I don't have to. But I understand the mechanisms of how to optimize that. Yeah. So you want to select bacteria cultures that are going to enhance your digestive experience. And so some of the standpoints are if you're initiating a bacteria culture, and one of the things is you can strategically select products. So maybe you heard of 3 really great products from your associative professionals. So you go, okay, I'm going to try this product month 1. I'm going to try this product month 2, and I'm going to try this product month 3. And I'm going to write down the experience that I feel. Some will cause gas, some will cause bloating, some will not feel good, some will make you feel queasy. That's shifts in your microbiome. And then some you'll feel amazing. Some you'll like, oh my God, I feel so good. Well, that's the bacteria that's right for you. Okay, now we've gone a little bit further. We've done some customized blends for various reasons. Like we have a patented plant L. plantarum that's been mutated through an extreme process that we were able to develop a patent from it. And I can't list all the things on it because it's illegal for me to say under this environment. But put it this way, I take those every day. I have not had a viral infection, a bacterial infection. I have not had a sickness or a cold in 15 years.
Wow.
Because I call them the Navy SEALs. They just wipe out bad guys as soon as and it's undefeated against food poisoning. People get food poisoning, they come over the house, I'm like, here, take a handful of these. It's done in 30 minutes.
Wow.
Right? Because food poisoning is just a toxin that is produced from a bad bacteria inside your body. It'll wipe it out. We have another strain for people who suffer from leaky gut.
I wanted to really talk about, and right before we really dive into leaky gut, because that's one that I feel like I want to really kind of dive into. And so if you guys are just listening or tuning in, you're listening to Relationship Renegades on Fun for Life Radio. We're going to go into our first segment of rapid fire questions to get to know Wade a little bit, but stay tuned because we're going to be talking about leaky gut. And one of the things I heard about, not only the supplement company that you are, but the lifestyle and health and fitness magazine that I was reading the other day about how Harvard talked about how everyone has leaky gut. And so I want to kind of talk through that. So if you guys are just tuning in, stay tuned so we can hear more about why you have leaky gut, maybe how you can help yourself and maybe your family. So let's get right into it, babe. You want to take it off with the first rapid fire question? We love this segment. It's just, a fun way to get to know you better and for people to get to know you better, maybe things they don't know about you and to connect with you on a deeper level. So, especially since we're talking about our relationship to food, Wade, what is one of your favorite foods and also least favorite foods?
My least favorite food I'll start with first was squash that my mother used to force me to make. I really struggle with that, so I think there's a psychological and emotional connection
Sounds
to it.
like it,
I do like some kind of types of squash nowadays. One of my favorite foods I would have to say is Napoleon cake. A friend of mine, she's Russian, and her family comes from multi-generation bakers, and they make, I don't know if you've had Napoleon cake, but it's this little tiny flaky crust with cream, and it's like it takes all day to make one of these cakes. And I had one this year for my birthday, and it was the first time in 10 years I had to have one, and it was absolutely divine, and I can still get juice off that.
I love it.
I thought you were going to say potatoes, my man.
I know. I love that.
Potatoes was my go-to food. Yeah. It's my favorite food in the world.
Yeah.
But again, you talk about how based off of your genetics, potatoes do really well for you. And we'll get into that into further, but I think talking a lot about, eating based off of your genetics is so crucial. So take it away. Number 2, babe.
Número 2. So, what are you listening to these days? You got your headphones on. Is there a podcast? Is there a music station, a playlist? What are you listening to these days?
Great question. I'm very passionate about the work of Jordan Peterson, kind of the controversial psychologist out of Toronto, for 2 reasons. One, I find it fascinating how deeply mischaracterized he is in a lot of major publications when you actually listen to him and his goals. And I'm not saying everybody has to agree with everything, but I think he's a very passionate person doing great work in the world, but is often maligned by forces of influence. So I think he does great work. It's fascinating. I'm always listening to a little bit of Dr. David Hawkins every year, Power versus Force, and that was here. I had a lot of time to spend with Dr. Hawkins back in the day. He's been a great spiritual teacher. I do dive a little bit into the sports world. I'll listen to a little bit of Skip and Shannon sometimes. And then, of course, during the whole election thing, I was sourcing between both left and right media, because trying to source out the truth between the propaganda machines. I believe in listening to my opponent's ideas clearly so I can find merit and hone my own perspective or expand the limitations in my own ignorance. I think that's really important. Eric Weinstein, I'll listen to him. He's a mathematician, really interesting character. So, and then a little bit of a sprinkling of a little bit of Joe Rogan if they got a good. Everybody's got to get a bit of Joe, right?
Yeah, I love the diversification there, and some great quality sources there.
Definitely love that you talked about, listening to both sides of arguments, which I think is so profound. I would love to get into that in more of the episode. But rapid fire number 3 is, what is one of your favorite childhood experiences?
I can remember I played ice hockey in Canada, and when I would get the puck on a breakaway experience, it was probably my first experience of transcendence. So a breakaway is kind of like when you get past the defense and it's just you and the goalie, and you have a period of time where you've got to figure out the move that you're going to make on the goalie to try and score. Well, when I started experiencing that as a young child, everything would go into that Satori state, which was slow motion. Sound would change, the experience would change. And it's almost like the movies would capture it, where you can hear your breath and you can hear the sounds of the skates, and you're seeing, and you kind of come in, and then you would score, and there's like this moment, and then the roar of the crowd hits. Like, kind of do this in cinematography very well. But I literally experienced that as a kid, and that was my first start into Satori no mind experiences, and I've always sought that ever since.
I love that. I too relate to that in the world of like being on stage and dancing and acting, when time just slows down, and it's magical. It's so magical.
Rapid fire question number 4. So if you guys follow Wade on Instagram or any of the social media platforms, you'll see that he has a God's Gym, and it's on top of, I think, your rooftop, which I love here in Venice. So, and I guess just in the, I'm wearing a spiritual gangster shirt. So I guess on that theme, why God's Gym? And maybe tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I had this, when I was 15, I read Arnold Schwarzenegger books, and I had this dream of moving to Venice, owning a supplement store company that helped products around the world, and competing in the Mr. Universe contest. And all of those things did come true. And I dreamed of living here, so I moved here early in the year, and I'm going to Gold's Gym down the street, and there's Arnold Schwarzenegger training in the gym. And so it was like my childhood vision kind of worked out. And then COVID hit, and then they shut down the gym. And I went to Arizona for a little bit at first because we didn't know what was going on. And so I stayed there for 3 months, and then they opened the gym back up. So I said, okay, I'm coming back, because that was my determining factor whether I'd be in California or not. And they opened it for 10 days, and then they reclosed it. And then I had to move out of my neighborhood because it was destroyed through a variety of conditions thanks to COVID. And I was like, man. And so we found this new house, and I got here and had everything I wanted, and then it had this rooftop, and I remember the old Muscle Beach guys used to train outdoors, and I said, I'm building a gym on the roof, and it's serene. It's on the 4th floor of my building, all 4 floors, and so I put a power rack, and I put these things, and I started training outside in the sunshine, just like the old time body. And I was like, this is amazing. And I felt really connected with divinity and with God. And I was like, I used to go to Gold's, but I thought I was losing because it was close. So I dropped the losing, and now I just got God's Gym.
I love that.
There it is.
I love that.
The new golds. We got God's gym.
I do. Like working out outside in nature to me is one of my favorite. It is like how I connect to my higher power. You know, that's where I feel the most connected and powerful and aligned. So yeah, that working out outside is so awesome.
Well, that is the rapid fire segment of the show. Getting back into Leaky Gut. And how we were talking about, I was reading the magazine that you guys put out. I love that you guys do that. So yeah, I had no idea. I know that probably the majority probably had leaky gut, but according to Harvard, that everybody has leaky gut syndrome. And so for those, you know, for our listeners, can you explain what leaky gut is and why that's so high?
Yeah, so our intestinal tract is a very permeable layer, and outside of the intestinal that intestinal area, we have is like or I should say inside it, there's a mucosal layer, just kind of like you have mucus in your nose and things like that. There's this layer that's between you and the lining of your intestinal tract. And this is where these various bacteria cultures will live in layers. Now, due to chemical exposure, drugs, lifestyle, washing your hands too much, what's going to happen is you can get actual breaks in this mucosal layer, which you have like holes. And what happens is undigested foods, particularly inflammatory based proteins, literally feces, start to leak into your gut, into your bloodstream. What your immune system then sees this is some sort of foreign agent that needs to be attacked. And so you'll have an inflammatory response in the body. So if you've gone to a place and you've had an all of a sudden you get all stuffed up, or you wake up in the morning and you're all bloated and gassy or whatever, or you got crust coming out of your eyes or really bad breath, chances are you've got undigested proteins that are leaking into the system and getting into your bloodstream. That increases the thickness of your blood. It makes your heart pumps harder. It creates brain fog in the morning. A lot of people suffer their inability to concentrate because your body's trying to detox these chemicals that shouldn't be in the blood. And so what happens, it's in order to rebuild, you need to provide the materials that allow the bacteria and various bacteria. So what we did is we went and hired PhDs in microbiomes. We have a lab in Europe that do all sorts of experiments. We do crazy stuff, like we bombard bacteria with EMF waves, and then we put toxic chemicals in there, and we put food additives and preservatives, we'll put dyes, we'll put vitamins, and we see what these bacteria do. And they respond to all different types of things like people. You give them vitamins and they get better. You give them chemicals and they get worse. And what was interesting is there's a product called IGY Max. It's a patented product and a few specific strains of bacteria cultures, which when combined together have proven to rebuild this layer. And one of the first steps to kind of sealing the gut off to make sure that you're not leaking these particles in from your food is to get that mucosal layer back. So we created a product called Leaky Gut Guardian, which is going to be called Biome Breakthrough now that we have the definitive video evidence, which we will be releasing later this year, demonstrating how this actually works, and that repairs that. So people who are suffering from leaky gut, they get up in the morning, they take a couple powder, you let it wait 30 minutes. It's amazing. It tastes like cake frosting. Make your body just do the happy
Napoleon cake frosting.
That's right. Well, after Napoleon cake, you definitely want to have some. So, so that's one of our kind of feature products. Yeah. Along with the Cognibiotics is another one that we developed.
Amazing.
And yeah, you said that it's majority of people suffer from that. They might not even know it, right? They might be like just kind of feeling off, or they're not digesting their food, and they might not know that they're actually just experiencing leaky gut. Is that correct?
Yeah, and if you have a lot of inflammatory conditions like gluten sensitivity and things like that, which a lot of people, you really are down that rabbit hole quite far. Yeah, and it's really simple. You just take a little scoop of this stuff every morning, and you'll know real quick. Yeah, you'll know in 30 minutes if it's working for it, because you'll get this sense of, wow, this is really good. It's kind of like, that something's really good for you. Yeah. Your body responds very well, so it's pretty easy to figure out.
That's super exciting.
I love that, because I think there's so many people that are looking for like felt experiences. There are a lot of people who take a bunch of stuff, they don't know what's working, and it's like when you're feeding the right guys and you're destroying the bad guys, it's kind of like, oh, hey, look, I feel really good. And I think whether it's in the subtle things, which is important, but also some like really good things, immediate or 30 minutes or even like in the next day or weeks, I think is important. And I'll just be honest real quick too, because this is important. This is important to me too, because I remember, I think it was 2 years ago, I was, doing, the Viome, GI maps testing, a bunch of testing like us biohackers do. And I used to do so much, like years and years ago, so much testing. I've kind of wind down a little bit because I kind of are more intuitive about certain things, which is nice, but I kind of needing to ramp up some things. Like 2 years ago, I did have some leaky gut, and it's because, I'm not always perfect. I probably like 80% like good, and then 10% or 20% I'm like, whatever, I'm trying to live some life.
Yep.
But I definitely destroyed my gut. I used to drink a lot from 15 years old, going to Juarez, Mexico, border town in El Paso, all throughout, until I was like 30 years old, and now I'm 35. And so I'm having to like, rebuild a lot of things. And so, I don't know if I still have it. And so, but regardless, I want to be able to, try that product out, but also find out some other things in addition to kind of maybe compound the effect, some natural things, maybe some bone broth, right? And maybe some other things that maybe you can recommend.
And that was kind of going to be my question.
Yeah.
Like if someone, because the thing that I fear, right, is someone's like, oh, I can just, like the mindset that a lot of people have is just give me a pill and give me something, give me a supplement to make me better. When in reality, like, yes, supplements help, but if you're taking a supplement, even the best of the best supplement, and then you're going and eating a bunch of crap food and chemicals, and your stress is like through the roof, and you're not sleeping well, like, good luck, you know?
It's like throwing a glass of water in like a wildfire or something.
Right. So
yes.
Can you speak to that and almost what I think I used to have, honestly, and I've had a huge wake up call, is this mindset of, oh, I can just take a supplement and it'll make me better.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that I teach, and we give away a course on the awesome philosophy, which is the systematized approach that had to kind of make sense of the whole world of nutrition and diet and stuff. And I always say you cannot supplement your way out of a bad lifestyle, period. Mm-hmm. For most people that have very complex digestive issues that are really compromising life, I highly recommend that they get a professional in their field and they follow initially an elimination diet. And the elimination diet will help them weed out the big inflammatory agents. And then during that time, you would just want to start to introduce the elements that feed the good guys, whether it's, artichokes or something like that might be a good, or fibrous foods that are going to do that. Now, some people who can't tolerate fibrous foods say, well, I can't do that way. Well, that's why you need to even be more concentrated on elimination diet before, so that then you can introduce, things that will patch up your gut, and then introduce the proper bacteria that's going to help you to manufacture the right neurochemicals in your brain to get your brain so that you don't have these negative responses. So systematizing your approach. And for the most part, I really strongly believe that periods of alternate day or intermediate or expansive fasting tend to be very good because your gut tissue has an ability to repair. You'll also starve out some bad ones. And then you can add various herbal concoctions to kind of clean out the bad guys, whether that's going as far as doing, colonics or herbal cleanses, or some of the Ayurvedic or Chinese methodologies of adding various herbs that have been shown to wipe out the bad guys and bring in the good guys. The bottom line is you need to recondition that group of good versus bad in your intestinal tract. And in order to do that, the simplest way to think about it is you need to starve the bad guys and feed the good guys. Mm-hmm. That's really what it comes down to. So elimination starts with starving, and then adding those elements in a systematized way. And then usually after a period of 6 months to a year, and it's going to take time because it took however long to get there.
Right.
Then you can reverse that trend, but it's going to take some time, some effort, some discipline, and some professional help, because you're going to go through some days where you're going to have the food cravings. Yeah. When you start starving the bad guys, and we've all known this, you start on your diet program, you're like, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to do this. And then by Friday, you're going out of your mind with your cravings. That's not you that has the cravings. That is the bacteria culture releasing chemicals into your nervous system to tell you to go eat the bad food, to drink the bad drink, to do the thing that's not right for you, because they want to survive and they're running your brain. And just knowing that says, that's not me talking. that's the bacteria, and I need to take control. And as intelligent, sentient beings, we have that power to do that, but we need to know that.
Yeah, and I think it's so key that that good things take time, and like bad habits are like instant gratification, but like the good habits are, they take some time. And if you guys are just tuning in, you're listening to Relationship Renegades on Fun for Life Radio, talking to President of BioOptimizers, Wade Lightheart. One of the things I want to get into is one of the people that we had on our show was Dr. Michael Bruce, a sleep doctor. We're of course talking about sleep and how that's important for relationships, and so, part of night routines for certain people, for a lot of people, it's, magnesium. And I loved, after doing some research and due diligence with you guys, to really find out that, not all magnesium is created equal. So I feel like at least the masses probably know about magnesium now. They're probably, picked a product off the shelf and are maybe using it, hopefully at nighttime and maybe during the day, because there's so many. I thought it was interesting as to why maybe they're not all created equal. And I think it's also important to talk about magnesium, not only for deficiency purposes, but because I think people are so stressed in this pandemic, plus their jobs and their pivots and maybe the domestic violence and all this stuff going on. And it's like, there's ways to get back to that Zen-like spirit. And I think we need that right now. So I think there's a deep dive that we can take maybe to magnesium now, and maybe starting off with why they're not all created equal.
First and foremost, magnesium is the most common mineral that is deficient in North American diets, because over the last 80 years that we talked about, we've created an excessive deficiency of magnesium. Magnesium exists in a 2-to-1 ratio to calcium. And so we have high calcium diets, low magnesium. And so what our body does is starts to dump calcium out of the system. And people think, I need more calcium. No, you need more magnesium to balance out. And this is what prevents osteoporosis. Magnesium is a control element. It's also involved in over 600 chemical processes in the body. Now, here's really interesting, another unintended consequences of technological innovation is when exposed to blue light and electromagnetic frequencies, you increase your burn rate of magnesium in the body. In other words, you require more magnesium. And here we are in these highly technologically advanced. So you've got twofold stressors happening. Then when you add stress and you have a cortisol dump in the body, you also use magnesium to buffer that cortisol to bring things back through the enzymatic reaction chain. So now we have a situation where we have 3 different stressors that are cooking on people. And what usually people do when they're tired, they don't sleep, you take what? Take caffeine, you take stimulants, you take, cognitive enhancers, which most of them work on central nervous system stimulants. And so now you've added a 4th element that's draining your magnesium reserves. And so I went through that a number of years ago. I'm not immune to burnout. I'm not perfect or whatever. And I was, because I'm a biohacker and I felt I could just hack my way to like superstar, I was running 3 companies, working 12 to 14 hours a day, 7 days a week for 2 years straight, living in a foreign country and, in a relationship and just doing everything. And I was a maniac, and I led myself to burnout. And I had remembered attending a seminar with Charles Poliquin, the strength sensei who had coached Olympic athletes in 27 different gold medal sports. So crazy, who's who else. And he talked about, and I went back to my notes, and he had talked about how high performing stress athletes, he would use these different types of magnesiums because different types were absorbed by different parts of the body. And I went, well, that's interesting. And so I looked at his research, and I looked at some other competing research on magnesium, and there was all these different types of magnesium. I'm like, well, which one's the best? So my business partner and I, we're both crazy experimenters, and he's a spreadsheet guy. So we said, okay, look, we're just going to buy them all. We bought all of them. I literally had an entire counter full of different bottles of magnesium. And we follow a philosophy that was founded in orthomolecular nutrition, which was developed by Dr. Linus Pauling, Dr. Abram Hoffer, and Dr. David Hawkins. And they used increasing dosages of any given product to hit tolerance, which you call break the GI barrier. You get the runs, and then you would titrate down from that to stay that dosage. Right. And I write about it, and it's called the bucket theory of nutrition. It's a video on the Awesome Health course. You can read all about it to explain the theory. So we said, okay, we're going to titrate up with these different ones and see where we break the GI barrier. Because if you take too much magnesium, you get the runs. Okay, really. Yeah. So we literally systematized, and we take this one, and we'd start at 500 milligrams, 1,000 milligrams, 1,500 milligrams, 2,000 in divided dosage. And then we started to determine which ones you got the runs from, which ones you could go in higher and higher dosage. We narrowed those down between a group of different ones. And then we looked at the correlative conditions that they address, whether it was, vasodilation, people that suffer from migraine headaches, oftentimes it's magnesium deficiency. They don't dilate their blood vessels. There's magnesiums that are involved in heart, electromagnetic regulation for your heart, to turn your heart off, cramping in the body, PMS issues, enzymatic function. And so what we did is we narrowed it down to 7 different types, and we took those 7 types and broke them down into the ratios based on our charts and our initial studies to create this kind of like all-in-one magnesium, because each one had a kind of a different benefit. And we made it for ourselves.
Yeah.
I went through this. I got my mind back, my calm back. I made some lifestyle changes. I got rid of one of my companies, and I said, okay, I did all that too. And so then we said, well, let's make this for ourselves. Maybe people will like it.
Yeah.
We had no idea what was going to happen. People started using this product and started raving about it. And then like some really famous people got onto it and started using it, and they started talking about it. And the next thing you know, the magnesium breakthrough became a household name, and it expanded crazy and has become one of the very best-selling products in the entire company history. And we had no idea. And to this day, the testimonials we get from Magnesium Breakthrough exceed everything else we've ever done.
Wow.
It's remarkable how many people it alleviates stress with.
Yeah.
And just so you need people know, from a neurochemical foundation, particular people who are on a variety of different anxiety-based medications and stuff like this, and it's not medical advice, but many of them will deplete magnesium reserves, which is essential in neurochemical formation. That's why they switch different drugs oftentimes. And so things like magnesium can be very, very helpful. Please check with your doctor and your physician, but it's amazing how it's helped people so much.
That's so incredible. I mean, the amount of, I forget what the statistics are, but the amount of people that are magnesium deficient, and even just talking about, there's so many different types of magnesium. So they're not all the same. And, we have been taking your products and really do feel a difference in it. And, even for women out there, like I've been on a journey. I feel like the earlier part of my life was like a gut health journey, and now I'm on a journey of like hormone health. And so many women suffer from hormonal issues, infertility issues, that are obviously so linked to diet and nutrition and microbiome. And so it's so exciting for me to hear that can help with that as well. And kind of speaking on that from men to women, in your research, in your testing, I'm so fascinated recently by this understanding that I think is misrepresented in the health world of the difference between men and women, and women's health versus men's health, and how different it is, especially for women that are in their reproductive years, that have a cycle, and how much the hormones go up and down. When it comes to enzymes and microbiome and gut health, have you noticed a difference at all when you researched like women compared to men, or is it pretty similar?
Well, no, there is some significant variances. And I think there's a big problem which has happened in the externalized cosmetic industry in particular. So young women are exposed to and a lot of social pressures, and women are designed to have higher fat content on their bodies, particularly in their childbearing years. Historically, women were having kids at 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 years old, like these sort of age groups. And that was the traditional. And there's a hormone cascade that happens after you have kids as well. Well, now in an industrialized world with all the options that women have, and I think that's a positive state, we've introduced 2 main elements. Number 1, birth control, which totally gives women a lot more options, but we don't know the unintended consequences of deep hormonal manipulation, which are related to microbiome function. The second thing, these externalized pressures are taking women to lower their body fat levels lower than what is generally accepted earlier than life. And they're doing that through restrictive dieting, particularly. I'm all for the exercise. I think that's fine. I think the biggest thing is the restrictive dieting that's causing a problem. And to get this body fat to fit the cover of the magazine or the Instagram model or the fitness competitor or that sort of stuff with that pressure. And they're a Hollywood career or they're in a professional career. There's a very competitive nature around beauty. Well, those lead in, and then all the chemicals that are used on the skin, with makeup and these things which interrupt microbiome interactions, all of that cascades. And because a woman's hormonal cycle radiates far greater than a man's cycle, it has a whole host of food cravings, cognitive cycles, how they feel, their emotional range. There's a new book out there, I forget the name of it, which is explaining to women how to amplify during their period cycle about what they're doing and what they're focusing on.
Yeah.
For men are kind of like pretty steady. Most women do better if they're doing intermittent fasting, if they eat early in the day, where men will do better if they eat later in the day is a good example of that, right?
Yeah.
Because they can activate starvation mechanisms, which have a cascade of hormones if women don't feed themselves properly, particularly early in the day. Then if they get into pregnancy and breastfeeding or these type of things, those accentuate the demands on a woman. I think also women are under an incredible array of psychological pressures because, they think they need to be the super mom. They need to be a great cook. They need to be like a porn star. They need to have a business.
Seriously.
And it's just like, you can't be all these things possible. So what happens is there's a sense of I'm not good enough.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that leads to a cascade of actions and behaviors that aren't built in normal, healthy development. So all the benefits that have happened for women in the last 40 years, 50 years, I think are great. But as a species, we haven't learned how to manage that. And I think both as men and women, we need to reconsider how we are going to navigate as a species moving forward, because we are the first species in planetary history that females now can control their birth cycle. First time.
Yeah.
So we don't know, over the billions of years of evolution, we don't know how to manage that. Now, that's not a bad thing. That's not a good thing. It's just a thing. So we need to have conversations like this to address that. And the food needs that are required in these microbiome things, I think, are really big. I know for a lot of women, they have yeast infections are really a big issue that can come up, and that's directly correlated with addressing your bacteria. I've got literally hundreds of girls have been able to correct that through restrictive eating, systematized by these kind of restriction or specific restriction of certain foods, and then adding these elements that we referred to before, the right bacteria and the right prebiotics, and they can recover and live a happy, healthy life again and get their body the way they want and do all the things that they want to do when they get their microbiome fixed out.
Yeah, thank you so much for talking about that. And I'll let you jump in, babe. I just want to say, if you are a woman listening, especially if you're in your reproductive years, just kind of recapping what he said, because I think it's so crucial. And I definitely want to be, as I'm learning this, a voice for that, to just expand that message of, hey, we are different than men. And especially in the biohacking world, I think women forget that they're not a man. And when it comes to food and fasting and dieting, because our bodies are so different, and so honoring that is so important. And so, if you're listening and you're following, a diet that maybe was way more made for a masculine system and it's not working, there's a big reason for that. And so thank you for speaking to that and working with women specifically on how a woman can maybe eat earlier in the day, eat more than they think they might have to, or more than a man might, and that's okay. I think it's just needs to be talked about more. It's just not talked about enough.
It isn't. No. Yeah. And before we dive into our second segment with Renegade Moment, a breakthrough moment that Wade has had in his life that kind of, transformed him, and maybe where he chose differently and had that experience. Before we kind of have Wade share that with us, one of the things that afterwards I'd love to dive into is one of the things we talk about at Relationship Renegades is seek to understand. And I think that's not only, a big topic right now in the world that we live in, and we've been touching on those things, but, early on we were talking about our good and bad bacteria in our guts, and how, and maybe we may be showing up currently in our relationships in a way that, that we don't want to be. And that to maybe have compassion for ourselves for various reasons, for yourself and for maybe your significant other, because it could be that the bad bacteria in their gut is speaking louder than the good. And obviously we've touched on some great things to really feed the good ones, but really seeking to understand, being aware of the things we're talking about now and how you can implement these lifestyle changes, food changes, supplement changes, everything that we've been talking about, because it could be our bad bacteria speaking louder than the good. So stay tuned so we can dive a little bit deeper on that and more. But let's go ahead and dive into the Renegade moment.
Renegade moment.
Wade, what was your breakthrough Renegade moment for you, brother?
Dying.
Boom!
All right.
that one was a life changer. I had an overdose when I was 22 years old and went through the death experience.
Wow.
Saw God, I did the life review, and completely transformed my perspective of the world. I had no idea of past lives. I had no idea of those experiences. I grew up in a traditional Christian background, and I had some issues with organized religion because I couldn't figure out if this guy loved me, but then if I didn't love him, I got burnt in hell. That doesn't make sense to me. And then I resolved those issues inside of that experience and led me on to a quest for spiritual awareness that took me to ashrams and various experiences throughout the course of my life. So that was a game changer at 22.
Wow.
I want to hear a little bit more.
I know, please unpack that.
Yeah, what was the experience like? And
so it was an overdose issue at 22 that happened?
Yeah, so the going into it was I would say the upcoming terror of knowing that your life is going to end. And as that shrinking feeling came down and I was losing the physical aspects and kind of going off, I was like, okay. And I remember there was a choice where I said, no, I'm going after death, and I'm facing this right head on. And I won't bore you with all the little intimate details, but it was it would take me 2 weeks to unpack the entire experience. It was very vivid and very clear than any memory that I have at this historically.
Wow.
But then, I was standing in an abyss, kind of like a place, and then the door opened up and the light kind of shone through, and I was very clear, this is the source of all things. And inside of that, I wasn't judged by an outside of a third entity. I was in the appearance of that infinite loving perfection. I judged myself. And that's where I went through the life review and experienced my life, not how I lived it, but the impact that I had made on other people. And at the end of that, I've had this feeling of self-loathing. I went to some various other dimensions, I would call the upper levels of hell, which were kind of psychic realms, which were not pleasant at all. I don't recommend going there. Please avoid it if you can. And then I would come back to this center state, and then I started to experience different lifetimes that I would recall these lifetimes. And those memories are as clear as the memories I have of this lifetime. And so I had no idea of any of this stuff. This was very radical. And so when I come out of that, I can remember coming out, and my girlfriend was there at the time. And this felt like I went through like this millions of years of evolution. And I get back and maybe 6 or 8 hours have passed. And my girlfriend's there, and she's like, I wake up and I look and I go, I'm so old. She's like, what are you talking about? You're 22. And I'm like, no, I'm so old, because I had this massive shift in conscious perception. And then for about 2 weeks after, I felt like, is a piano going to fall on my head or something? Like I felt like in that potential world, I died. That infinite potential, if you're looking at a quantum universe of almost like a 3-dimensional reality, you kind of travel down these conditioned linear realms of that we learned from the Newtonian paradigm. And it was like I jumped out of that track into another possible track, another quantum possibility. And I knew in that life I had died, because when I died, I also became reborn and I was a little baby. I saw my parents and I was like, oh, I'm going to forget Wade. I see how the whole program works. And so it was really trippy and nothing to worry about. It's a beautiful experience when you finally get past the fear part. It's kind of like the whole world collapses and then opens up and you go, oh, it got me. Okay. And so that was beautiful. And so from that point, that just shifted my perception reality from self as a me, is, Wade, who goes through the world and has a life and a name and works out and all these kind of stupid things that we all do, but gave me a greater context of not only the impact that I had on other people, but also my connection that I had with other people, that they were some aspect of the same consciousness from which we all emerge. And how could I reflect that, honor that, and learn from that and experience that and see the commonality between all people.
Gosh, that's so beautiful. I'm like so emotional over that story. It's so incredible, and I've never heard somebody really tell something like that in such a profound, beautiful, open,
very eloquent
way. So thank you so much for trusting us and the audience to share that really, intimate, powerful experience. As I think especially in today's world of comparison, oh my gosh, I can't say the word, comparison and criticism and self-judgment, we can get so lost in that space, especially living in a very social media world. I'm an actress. I'm in that, that all the things that you talked about have experienced that, like body image issues and self-criticism at a very high level, and learning how to transform that and how all that energy and how can I help others and how can I be so grateful for this experience has really transformed that in such a powerful way.
Yeah.
And really bringing it back to everything that you talked about of how everything affects everything, growing up with a really bad gut health issue and then hormonal issue and how that affects my relationships and then my relationships to my food and my relationships to my body and it's just this whole synergistic relationship thing. From that experience, I know you talked a little bit about how that changed you, but if someone's listening right now and they're really struggling with like a mental health issue or emotional health issue or relationship issue, what advice would you give them, especially coming from that experience?
Yeah, absolutely. The biggest obstacle that you face in your life is an invitation from divinity to discover untapped potential that lies within you, because first and foremost, the fact that you exist is determinant of your inherent value from the universe itself as an acknowledgement. So whether you're acknowledged on social media or by someone who you want to be acknowledged by, or some kind of acclamation that you want in the world, you'll quickly find that none of those things have any value other than what you put on them. And so what one might feel in a given moment is merely an invitation to go a little bit deeper, to push a little bit higher. And almost everybody I know that has achieved anything in life or acquired anything in life or become whatever they wanted has done so despite the obstacles they faced. And those obstacles became the pressure point to bring the focus in, to transcend it. And then I think at the highest level, you then see how that journey become the perfect invitation to other people in the future who might struggle from the same thing.
Yeah, we talk about that for sure, about the, how like just changing the perception of suffering or obstacles. I mean, they for sure get you more focused and aligned and maybe wake up to maybe your purpose and passion. It's like that whole pain to purpose. And I think, last night we were watching, Rachele hadn't seen Gladiator. It was on the thing. And I was like, oh, cool, Gladiator. And, when we're talking about past lives, I don't know if I was Maximus back then. And, no. But I think, I forget who quotes this, but it's like, I feel like the mind is like a parachute. It only works when it's open. And I think it's great that you talk about all these things, whether it's past lives or different states of consciousness or what happens in the afterlife or how we show up in this world, and really being open. Like, let's continue to expand our consciousness, not only for ourselves, each other, the world around us. I mean, the world is waking up. There's a veil being lifted. We're evolving, And I think the more that we can be open, seek to understand, that we can start to build better relationships. And we always talk about, the quality of your life is based on the quality of your relationships. So, just being more aware of that. And I'm so glad that we're having this conversation, not only because you guys make some incredible supplements, but I love when people leading certain companies that they're practicing what they preach, they're continuing to learn, and they really just have a deep desire to kind of have that life review, maybe when you do pass again to the other side, to be able to say, hey, look, this time I did things differently, and that you really care. And so I just feel like more of that, we need more of that in the world. And so thank you for that, brother. And with that, we'd love to maybe dive in, unless you have another question. Love to maybe go into some favorite
I know that we only have a little bit of time left.
So
we covered a lot in this episode, but I really want to make it practical for people. And I loved so much, especially in a world where it's so confusing out there, so many different diets and fad diets and things to do or not to do. I love that you talk so much about eating based off of your genetics. So if someone's listening and they're just like, I'm so confused and I've tried all these different diets and they're not working, can you talk, just a little bit about like what someone listening right now can do with their relationship with their food, how they're eating their food, what they're eating, how they're eating, that could help them?
First and foremost, your journey towards health, I don't think starts with food. It starts with breath, because you can go weeks, months without food and survive. It's painful, but you can do it. You can go maybe a week or two without water. So water trumps food, and air, breath, you can go a few minutes without air and you need air. So I would say first cultivate a deep breathing practice in order that you can, when you get into those hyper anxious, stressful zones, that you have a method, whether it's box breathing or some other format that you do to bring yourself back to get into, the parasympathetic space. Second thing is you want to make sure that you hydrate. Most times that you're hungry, most times that you're tired, most times that you're off, you're just dehydrated. So start second with hydration, making sure the average person takes between 3 and 5 liters of water every single day, and divided doses. Carry a water bottle everywhere you go and make the purest, best water that you can. Second thing, movement, exercise. If you tied a person to a bed and didn't do anything with them, as you see in a hospital situation, they waste away and every parameter of health and vitality goes down. So air, water, and exercise are the few things that you cannot think. So when you're in those states, first and foremost, you need those pattern interrupts. You need to move, you need to drink water, and you need to breathe. And oftentimes that will cultivate anything, particularly if you can incorporate that with sunshine, because I see all food as a form of condensed life. I'm a bit of a physicist kind of mindset. And so all diet breaks down to electron covalent transfer. So sunlight is the ultimate activation of mitochondrial function. Then from that point, you can look at what amplifies the cell, the single organic aspect of all physicality. Enzymes, probiotics, minerals, vitamins, essential amino acids, essential fatty acids, and herbs. Those are the things that optimize cellular function. So those would be the supplements that I would add in regard to any diet. If you want to pick the diets for you, get a genetic and epigenetic expert to do the basic testing on you, and you will see these predispositions that you will have that will easily find foods that work right for your body. Finally, you need to bathe yourself in what I call mental beliefs and attitudes, which is you can have the best attitude in the world or you can have the worst one, and that's going to determine the effectiveness of everything that you do in life and the quality of your life. And in order to do that, you need to be engaging in things that uplift you, both your beliefs. You need to challenge beliefs that aren't supporting you, or that are less than or negative, Nelly, or that sort of stuff. You need to address those systematically and to cult around people that have a good attitude. You become the 5 best people that you hang out with. So if they're not in the negative Nelly, in the victim mode, you need to drop them, see them less, don't go around with them. That can be even family members if required. You need to take care of your health first before you help everyone else. And then finally, education, testing, and coaching. We talked about it. Education comes from learning from within how to educe, right? And you run a test. That could be, can I walk this distance? Can I eat this food? What happens? Run a test. But if you want to short term all that, get a coach. A coach will interject and say, hey, I've ran all these experiments. These are the things that we can do, so you can cut the learning curve. That's the entire awesome formula: air, water, exercise, sunlight, optimizers, mental beliefs and attitude, education, testing, and coaching. And we give it away, that entire course, 12 weeks, 5 to 15 minute videos. It's free from our website, so people can start there, go through it, and that will help them select the right person and the right thing next based on their budget. It doesn't make sense to go down the food path if you haven't got breathing. It doesn't make sense to go down the food path if you haven't got water. It doesn't make sense to go down the supplement path if you're not doing exercise. Those three things need to happen first. And I'm a guy that runs a supplement company. We don't even talk about supplements at like the 5th level of this course, because you can't supplement your way out of a bad lifestyle. And if your lifestyle isn't working, or if your life isn't working, it's because what you're doing isn't working. You have to be bone crushing honest about that.
Mic drop.
Mic drop.
That was so good. That was so good. If you're listening to this on YouTube, just like replay that like over and over and over again. It's so powerful.
Yeah, we always, at the very end, like you said, it's always the man in the mirror or the woman in the mirror. We talk about that a lot. We have the ability to make choices in life and being mindful of our choices. So guys, let's choose differently.
Yes, be renegades, choose differently.
And join our relationship renegades and our tribe, where we keep each other accountable to choose differently and to live a quality life and really just live a full life. So right now if you guys are just tuning in, you're listening to Relationship Renegades on Fun for Life Radio, talking about the president of BioOptimizers, Wade Lightheart. And we're going into our last segment here, favorite finds. Wade, what are some recent favorite finds that you've discovered, that you've enjoyed, that you'd like to share with our audience today?
So I'm a philosophy freak, and one of the things that I've been studying, I go back to it, everything, is the art of war.
I love the art of war.
And we're living in that. So if you look at the division that we're experiencing in life, I would say, is this result part of that process? And I do believe that it is. Second thing, I would say the complete works of Dr. David Hawkins. I continually to draw from that over and over. You can watch little 5 to 15 minute videos of him all over the internet. It's just the best thing to put positive impact in your day. And I would say, full spectrum saunas, pretty darn good when you're locked in your house, particularly if you're in a cold climate. I'm in a hot climate. I'm still using mine. It's awesome.
Yeah.
And getting that extra heat and that light going through the whole system is great. I think those are some great solid things to implement.
Amazing.
I love it.
Amazing.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing. All those favorite finds are awesome. Like, I'm so excited to go check, the people that you recommended out. And people listening right now, where's the best place for people to find you?
Yeah, so I think you can go to our site, like BioOptimizers. Actually, if you go to, BioOptimizers.com/relationship renegades, you can put Renegades 10 and you can get discounts on any of our products.
Nice.
If anybody tries any of our products, they'll get if it's not the most mind-blowing thing that you've ever taken, we just give you your money back. So there's no risk. But more importantly, you can go there and get the course that I shared with you. We have awesome updates. We've got a guest on the Awesome Health podcast. We do that Instagram, Facebook stuff, all that social media stuff. Somebody turns out that stuff that I produce. I don't even know. But
you get the relationships for that. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. We got people that help me out on that stuff. A guy like me that doesn't know much about those things, but we got all those things.
Yeah, so definitely, BioOptimizers.com/relationship renegades. Definitely go check out their stuff, guys. Like, we take them, especially coming from someone who struggled with gut health as well as hormone health. It really does make a dramatic difference. And if you're listening and you're going through struggles or challenges or stressors right now, again, checking in with, maybe it's not you. Maybe it's your gut health and the good and bad bacteria that you have within your system. And feeding the good guys more often and killing off the bad guys will have a significant effect on how you feel, how you show up in your relationships, and how you experience life, which I think is just so important. So thank you so much, Wade, for joining us on this episode.
Thank you so much, brother. Pleasure. Yeah, and that's awesome for Relationships 10. I know that I'm going to be for sure now that we talked about, because we have about, let's see, I have them right in front of me, 4 or 5.
We literally have them right here. Like magnesium.
But, yeah, we got the mass enzymes.
We got this one. We got all
the Probiotic, for those looking.
All of them.
But
we're big fans.
But I need to try the Gluten Guardian. I think you guys are changing that up, and I definitely need to.
Leaky Gut.
Yeah, that one. Oh, the Leaky Gut one, and I definitely got to try the oh my God, the gluten, because I'm highly sensitive to gluten, or probably the glyphosate.
We'll send you a bunch of stuff. And I would say one last thing on the relationships.
Yeah.
When I went through that crisis, I lost a relationship out of the poor decisions that I made, and I realized that I was producing the same relationship over and over again.
Yeah.
And so I did three things. I went to a spiritual retreat, did some plant medicines. I went to a Tony Robbins seminar, and I went to a neurofeedback system. And I put specifically what I wanted in a relationship, not who I wanted, but how I wanted to feel and how I wanted to relate, and became very specific about it. And what I came to realize is that you have to commit to a relationship that you deserve, because you are getting what you deserve. And if you're not committed to what you really think you deserve, you're going to get what you do deserve to what you are committed to. And so I would encourage people to really commit to the relationship that they would like to have with themselves and another, and to go at it in a way that they can open the communication, not as an opposite, but saying, here's what I want to achieve. How do we get there together? Whether that's a business relationship, whether that's a friendship, or whether that's an intimate relationship, the quality of your life is going to be determined by the number and frequency of difficult conversations that you have. And those conversations will open up doors of reflection for yourself and other people that will magnetize you in a way that we hear about in the Hollywood movies, but you can experience in your own life with your own partner. And I think that's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
So cool. I love that.
Wise words from Wade. Lightheart. Very awesome. Thank you for sharing that, brother.
Don't be afraid to have the difficult conversations. Yeah. That was a pattern that I used to have. And I literally am living proof of that statement. Once I got really comfortable in the uncomfortable of like rewiring my brain to just do the brave thing and have the uncomfortable conversations, it did. It led me to this beautiful, amazing relationship that I'm forever grateful for every day. And, just this whole show is about hope. This whole show is about that no matter what you've been through in your past, that there's still hope to create the love and lifestyle you always wanted. And
how you can co-create that love and lifestyle. Yeah,
absolutely. And a space where we all feel more safe, seen, heard, and loved. So thank you so much for being a part of this show and helping us co-create a world where healthy relationships really are the new norm.
Yes.
We celebrate you, we honor you, and just thank you for being with us today.
Namaste, brother.